Welcome back to another episode of the Bulletproof Fantasy Football YouTube channel. I am Drew Rosenchuk. You can follow me on Twitter at DFBeanCounter. So now we're going to get into some Michael Pittman Jr., some MPJ. He was not a player that I was interested in as a rookie. I actually gave him a bust alpha grade. The dude is everything that you could dream of physically. He's 6'4", 223 pounds. According to playerprofiler.com, he's got a 90th percentile catch radius, because he's a monster and he's fairly fast. He runs a 4.52 at 6'4", 223. So like his size adjusted speed is very, very good. He's a bona fide X receiver, right? His size and his speed is pretty much all that he has going for him, though. If you look at the rest of his profile, I always look for early declare. I want 21-year-old early declares. He was a 22-year-old rookie. He was a senior. Those are bad things in my process. So another thing that I always look at is breakout age. And Michael Pittman locked in an age 20.9, 39th percentile breakout age, which puts him in, how do I word this? Not great company. Basically, the great Peter Howard at PA Howdy has an excellent chart that shows you the hit rate, the historical hit rates of a breakout age given their draft round. So a 20.9 breakout age is roughly, 21. It's basically right on the fringe, right? He was the second pick, I believe, or third pick of the second pick of the second round in the NFL draft. So we're kind of like right on the vortex of first round, second round, 20 breakout age, 21 breakout age. So I just kind of like looked at all four quadrants in that range. So it's 26.7, 0%, 40%, 30% if we know nothing else about the profile. Unfortunately, we know a whole bunch else about the Michael Pittman Jr. profile, and his hit rate is actually lower historically than any of those on their own, which isn't great for the Michael Pittman Jr. advocates. However, this is his rookie profile, right? His rookie profile, one of the most impactful things that I look for rookies is I want them to be dominant. I want them to consistently dominate. And Michael Pittman Jr. did not consistently dominate. At 18, he did basically nothing. At 19, he did basically nothing. At 20, he went toe-to-toe with 18-year-old freshman, future fourth-round pick Amon-Ra St. Brown, and did not hit the threshold that I look for. At 21, he barely got to the threshold that I'm looking for. So 1 out of 4 years. That is for a market share of receiving yards, and quite frankly, that is also for receiving yards per team pass attempt. So that's definitely not stacking excellent. And it's not like he had bad college quarterbacks. He had Sam Darnold, JT Daniels, and Keaton Slovis. These are good college quarterbacks. They're not great NFL quarterbacks, or at least not yet, but, not so bad. Like I said, he didn't really do anything his first 2 years. His first year, we don't ask players to hit as 18-year-olds anyways. And he did play with Juju Smith-Schuster as an 18-year-old. But when he was 19, he played with pretty much nobody that he should have had issue displacing. And then at 20, he went toe-to-toe, literally 758 yards for Pittman and 750 for Amon-Ra. Really no change there. Or really no contest there. Pittman should have outproduced Amon-Ra by a fair margin, considering Pittman was entering his junior year and Amon-Ra was a fresh-faced 18-year-old freshman. And knowing what we know now about Amon-Ra, the fact that Pittman couldn't beat out a future fourth-round pick is kind of telling. So basically, Pittman gets the bust treatment, which is really, really not good. The bust wide receivers tend to have around a 10 to 12% hit rate historically. Not really a bet I'd be willing to place. Anyways, that's Michael Pittman, the prospect. But he has played in the NFL, so now we have more data to go and base our opinions on. Michael Pittman Jr. had a very up and down rookie season. So when I use sophomore comps. My whole process, my everything is based on, I want to see the journey a player takes to get from point A to point B. And the players that take the same journey or a similar journey, that's what I think they're probably going to do. It's really not all that complicated. So when I'm looking at sophomore comps, I look at their prospect grade, right? Like their prospect grade, what they did coming into the NFL still matters after the rookie year. It's not the only thing that matters, but it still matters to some extent. So when I'm comparing what a bust profile wide receiver looks like in the sophomore comp process, I am looking at only busts and long shots. If I'm looking at a long shot prospect, then I'm looking at busts, long shots, and coin flips. If I'm looking at a coin flip prospect, then I'm looking at long shots, coin flips, and bulletproof. I go one tier up and one tier down. That's basically how it works. And then I look at things like their fantasy points per game as a rookie. I look at things like their receiving grade per Pro Football Focus as a rookie. And then I compare their rookie performance across and I look at ADP trends. So did he lose greater than 12 startup slots after his rookie year? I have found that basically anyone that does is terrible. Like, there's just no coming back from it. Michael Pittman Jr. actually was trending that way, and then suddenly it took a turn for the better. I don't know why. Must have been after they got Carson Wentz. And he actually recouped, and he only lost 6 spots in ADP, so he does not qualify as a face planner, which is great news for Michael Pittman Jr. enthusiasts. The problem is we look at a lot more than that when it comes to sophomore comps. So we combine all these things together. This is his list of comps. We have James Jones, Justin Hunter, Michael Pittman, Mohamed Massaquoi, Mecole Hardman, Greg Little, Vincent Brown, Jordan Shipley, and Traquan Smith. These are bust and long shot tier wide receivers with similar points per game, ADP trends, PFF grade, so on and so forth. It was not a good rookie season. It's not a good outlook for Michael Pittman Jr. The only hit on that list is James Jones, and he hit a top 24 season one time, a singular top 24 season. And beyond that, Michael Pittman Jr. only had 1.37 yards per route run. That is really not good. That's really, really bad. Yards per route run is also a very good metric. It just doesn't really add anything to my sophomore comp, so I don't usually look at it. But when I'm looking at it in this particular instance, because his was quite bad, he is basically the worst on the list, save for Greg Little, Traquan Smith. That's it. Everyone else was more productive on a route run basis than Michael Pittman. It wasn't good. It was really not good. So in my opinion, you should be flipping Michael Pittman Jr. You bought him as a late first, early second last year. You can probably sell him as a late first, early second this year. If you can flip him into someone that I really like say an Elijah Moore, who I plan on covering on next week's podcast, I would be very, very interested in doing that. And I understand that Michael Pittman Jr. has a much higher ceiling than someone like Elijah Moore. I was just trying to pick somebody that I think has a bright future. It's not so much about ceiling when we're talking about players that are probably never going to do anything worthwhile. I just want a player that's going to be usable, that I can plug into my lineup and rely on them on a week-to-week basis to do something. And we can't do that with Michael Pittman Jr. right now. When I have a situation like this, because I don't know if you guys know this, but Paris Campbell is not one of my guys. I did not think he was a good prospect in the first place. I did not think that he was any good after his rookie year because he barely played. And when he did play, he was terrible. Like, literally, he was so bad. It wasn't like he was kind of okay. He was absolutely horrific. That's what we're looking at in the Colts wide receiver core. And then, T.Y. Hilton, who's, 31 or thereabouts. There's nobody in this wide receiver core that I want. And when that's the case, somebody still has to catch the ball. But if I don't have faith in any of them being good, I'm just going to go get the cheapest one. And when it comes to Michael Pittman or it comes to Paris Campbell is so much cheaper. Michael Pittman is somebody that I have on 0 rosters. I have no exposure to Michael Pittman because I don't believe he's either going to provide a return on value where I can flip him later. And I don't believe that he has a greater chance than Paris Campbell at this point. I think it's a complete toss-up as to which of those two do anything. And it's more likely than not that neither of them do anything impressive. And nobody is fantasy relevant on that team right now. What I'm trying to say is if you have Michael Pittman Jr. on your team right now, you need to go and trade him. Go and trade Michael Pittman Jr. The dream is over.